Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. As David said, my name is Marupa Thola, and I work here in the Multiple Award Schedules Program Office at GSA. And today I'm going to be talking to you about GSA schedules and the utilization of small business. Now, just to give you a quick rundown of what I'm going to be discussing, first I'm going to talk about what the FAR has to say about small businesses in government procurements in general and under the Schedules program specifically. Then I'm going to move on to some of the basics of the Schedules program, and then what I like to call the meat of the presentation. I'll be going over some frequently asked questions, and they are going to be geared mostly towards the new authority to set aside schedule orders, but we will address some questions regarding the old flexibilities available under the schedules. Then I'm going to provide sample language or suggested language that ordering agencies should put in RFQs that will be doing set-asides. And last but not least, I'll be providing you guys with some links to additional information or resources. So, jumping right in, the FAR.
Water?
November 2nd
Got you some water?
Of this year.
Water?
Actually,
water?
I want to remind everyone, we are kind of recording this presentation, so if everybody could mute their phone lines, that'd be great. Thank you. So on November 2nd, the FAR was changed to provide agencies with discretionary authority to set aside orders under multiple award contracts. Some background behind this change. The reason for the change was the Small Business Jobs Act of 2010, which was signed into law around the end of September of last year. Now, the set-aside language was found in Section 1331 of the Jobs Act, which is referenced in the new FAR part, and it basically set out 3 items that you now see in this 19.502-4 on your screen. And the first 2 items dealt with set-asides and reserves at the contract level. The third item dealt with set-asides at the order level for multiple award contracts. Now, in this context, multiple award contracts includes federal supply schedules, which is the official name, so to speak, of the schedules program. You may have also heard it called GSA schedules or multiple award schedules or VA schedules. It all refers to the same program. Now, one of the important things to note about Section 1331 of the Jobs Act was that it had a statutory deadline of 1 year within which that section had to be implemented, which is why we all saw that interim FAR rule come out last month. Now, normally in circumstances like this, we would see the SBA issue a proposed rule where they would change their regulations based on what this Jobs Act said. Now, that proposed rule would go out for comments with other agencies and the public, and those comments would then be used to develop a final rule. That SBA final rule would then be used to create a FAR rule. But in this case, the FAR rule was issued first because OFPP, the Office of Federal Procurement Policy, and SBA, Small Business Administration, had that 1-year statutory deadline in which to implement 1331. Now, if you're familiar with that FAR case, you might note that the FAR rule is a little light on details, or you will notice as we go through this slide and other slides. And that's because basically the intent of the FAR rule was simply to turn on the ability for agencies to set aside orders. Prior to November 2nd, you could not do small business set-asides under schedules. Now, it's expected that a more detailed implementation guidelines will be provided in a forthcoming SBA proposed rule. I highly recommend that folks read the Federal Register notice that accompanied this FAR interim rule. And if you want to look it up, the keyword or the search criteria that you might want to use, it goes by FAR case 2011-024. Because the Federal Register notice that came out with that FAR rule definitely gives you some insight as to why this was done the way it was in the order that it was. I also recommend that you keep in mind that there is additional implementation guidance expected in the future SBA proposed rule. So when we get to the Q&A part of the session, just know that there won't be answers to everything at this time because the details haven't been figured out with respect to everything. Okay, so this new language in FAR Part 19 basically creates a whole other piece with regards to multiple award contracts and how set-asides factor into them. And the last part is the only part that we're really concerned about for this presentation, and it basically says that contracting officers may, at their discretion, set aside orders placed under multiple award contracts. For orders placed under Federal Supply Schedules Program, see 8.405-5. Which leads us to the next slide. And now you can see what new language is in FAR 8.405-5.